All right, I'm going to get going here. Welcome everybody to the final Finger Lakes PRISM partner meeting of 2022. My name is Sam Beck-Anderson. I'm the Associate Director of Invasive Species Programs at the Finger Lakes Institute and Hobart and William Smith Colleges, and the coordinator for the Finger Lakes PRISM. I'm really happy to be here with everybody. Thank you to all that attended. These partner meetings are really valuable for us to really help guide kind of what we do on a daily basis and really just help us connect to the partnerships and build these partnerships that are so important to the success of the PRISM. We have a really good program today. Just before we get started, like I said on the title screen here, please indicate in the chat your name and affiliation for our record keeping. But in addition to that, we'd really like to give everybody the chance to provide updates for their organization. So along with that, please indicate whether or not, or just if you would like to provide updates, please indicate as such. So that we have a list. Matt or Josh will be keeping track of who is kind of signed up for giving updates, so that I have a list at the end and I can just call through the different folks that would like to actually give updates. And it'll help me also have an idea of how much time each group should have. So like I said, we have a really awesome program today. You'll be able to hear, we'll be sharing from a number of our different programs, our projects, updates for this past year, really. I know we met in May, but we'll really be focusing on kind of everything that's happened since the last time we met and a little bit before that as well. We'll be sharing some plans for the future and kind of developments and where we're headed, of course. And on top of that, we have two invited guest speakers today. First, we have Kelsey McLaughlin, who is a forest pathologist for the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation Forest Health Diagnostics Lab. I saw Kelsey give a couple of presentations about Beech Leaf Disease over the past few months, and we recognized a gap in kind of our programming for this invasive pest, so we're really looking forward to share this information with our partners. We also have our own Sydney VanWinkle joining us today. She is our invasive species projects coordinator at the Finger Lakes PRISM. Sydney is going to be talking about the Macrophyte survey program and her work with the Rochester Institute of Technology Environmental Science Capstone course, and their continued efforts to assist in really driving, and their project is focused on evaluating and assessing our Macrophyte survey program. So she'll talk a little bit about the program itself and kind of the successes from this year, but we'll also kind of detail that process that we've been working on with RIT over the past several years. So with that, I'm just going to get started here in kind of our program updates. Let's make sure this progresses here. So just jumping right into things, basically we're going to run through just a lot of our different programs and kind of program areas. So first off, we have our water chestnut program. This is a continuation of a number of years of work at controlling and containing water chestnut populations throughout the Finger Lakes region. So this year, we had a team of early detection rapid response technicians that operated in many ways and at many times alongside of our hydrilla strike team. In between doing early detection and rapid response surveying, this team worked with volunteers and volunteer programs to pull water chestnut from high priority locations throughout the region. This year, we were out for 16 days, visited 14 sites, controlled a total of 490 acres, and surveyed more than that. We pulled more than 13,000 pounds. And I think one of the really biggest takeaways of this is we were able to engage with 180 volunteers or 179 volunteers and 20 of our watercraft stewards. I think this type of interaction with both stewards and volunteers really helps to builds, of course, a knowledge of this invasive species, but also kind of gets people on the ground and expands their knowledge specifically of methods for controlling invasive species. So gets people interested, gets people understanding that there are actual answers to some of these problems that we have. Not that we're ever going to be eradicating water chestnut, but working on controlling localized populations is a really great way to get people involved in this type of work. Our Watercraft Steward program, this was sort of an exciting, complicated year for the Watercraft Steward program. We had a couple of new sites this year. We worked with Keuka Lake Association, managing stewards as part of their Great Lakes Coalition's landing blitz. The collaboration with them, we covered new launches at Keuka Lake State Park and Penn Yan Village boat launch on Keuka Lake as well. These are some of the busiest boat launches in the state, and we were really happy to have some presence there and just internally gaining more knowledge about what it takes to sort of work on those sites and kind of manage invasives and interacting with a different group of boaters at Keuka Lake. So that was a really good opportunity, both to expand our experience within the region, but also, again, just continuing to build this relationship with Keuka Lake Association that I think went really well. We also supported a similar project from Seneca Lake Pure Waters. We weren't directly connected with their project specifically, but did support their efforts at a couple of sites on Seneca Lake as well with the landing blitz. I would say some of the biggest changes that we saw in our watercraft steward landscape was the introduction of a decontamination station at Canandaigua Lake State Marine Park. So we worked with a number of different great partners, including the city of Canandaigua, Canandaigua Lake Watershed Association, Canandaigua Lake Watershed Council, as well as State Senator Pam Helming, and a number of other great partners, New York State Parks, New York State DEC. All these different groups came together to really answer kind of the call of the locals and actually help to provide different resources that allowed this to happen. So we were staffing the decontamination station at Canandaigua Lake State Marine Park this year. I would say we learned a lot. It was a pilot program. So kind of as we were going, we were learning a lot. We were working with Adirondacks, folks from the Adirondacks that run these things very consistently. And ultimately, like I said, every month or so, we would come together and rehash sort of what happened with the decontamination station, how people were using it, how people were reacting to it, the actual logistics of kind of running a device like this at a very busy boat launch, as you can imagine, was complicated. And I will say again, thank you to all of our great partners for kind of supporting and just advising on a lot of this. There was actually construction that was done at the site in coordination with all of these partners to help kind of build this out and make this a possibility. So we're in talks with all of the partners and kind of how we can improve in the future and hope to continue that partnership as we go forward and build on our knowledge and experience. Like I said, it was a little bit of a slow start in terms of just getting people to actually interact with the decon station, but by the end of the season, we had decontaminated 177 boats at the site, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it at the end of the day, based on how we started, this ended up being a really solid number that we were happy with. So these are just some additional numbers of our watercraft steward program in general across the board. We had 25 stewards this year at 24 sites across 15 different water bodies. Overall, the coverage, the traffic we have seen, traffic at a number of launches spiked pretty heavily around 2020 with the onset of COVID-19. And since has kind of seen a steady decline in terms of how many people are using each boat launch, how many people we're actually reaching on a daily basis at a number of different boat launches. But traffic remains high in our region compared to other regions and other programs throughout the state. So we still have some of the busiest launches, despite in the region, and of course some of the busiest launches in the state. So again, reaching out to thanking our partners for this as well, thanking our stewards for a job well done this year. We intercepted almost 3,000 invasive species during inspections, and reached thousands and thousands of people with the important message of clean, drain, and drive. Obviously, this prevention is so important, and this program remains kind of a flagship of our PRISM, and just a really great way to spread the word and expand our reach throughout the region. The hydrilla project this year was also kind of exciting, I guess, in many ways. In addition to the kind of work that we do on, as a part of our core programming, we continue to support staffing for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers monitoring efforts in Ithaca and Aurora. Those are treatment sites that the Army Corps has taken over and taken the lead on for two populations of hydrilla in Aurora and down in Ithaca. So that's a really good experience for us, just learning a lot about kind of how different organizations approach problems like this. Across the board here, like I mentioned earlier, our hydrilla strike team and our EDR strike teams operate in many ways alongside of each other. They are doing very similar work. The methods are really similar in the way we're actually looking for plants, but the site selection to me is what differentiates these two programs the most. So we look at hydrilla sampling really as kind of looking for a needle in a haystack. We're trying to look at where, in addition to that needle in the haystack, we're looking at monitoring existing sites that we have treated or that we know are still viable populations of hydrilla. So we sort of lump these point intercept surveys together for reporting in some instances, and this is an example of that. So this map here gives an overview of the different areas where we were searching for invasive species, early detection of a number of high priority invasive species, or specifically hydrilla. So we were on 12 water bodies this year with over 12,000 rake tosses, over 75 days in the field. This says no new water bodies. That's supposed to say no new hydrilla infestations found. So we knew about it in Cayuga. It's still there, and we did find it in Cayuga on a number of different occasions. In addition to surveying for plants themselves, actually looking for plants, we are also surveying other locations to learn more about some of the abiotic and biotic factors that aren't as easily found with just throwing a rake. So for the past few years, we've been deploying, that's supposed to say hydroacoustic surveys across a number of different water bodies to that coincide with those high-risk areas. So if we see a site that might be high risk for introduction of invasive species or has invasive species present, we will go out and actually sample those sites, looking at, these are a list of some of the sites that we were at this year on Canandaigua and Cayuga lakes. Like I said, we are looking to sort of identify some of the abiotic trends and how, what makes a site susceptible to invasive species, but also looking at how sites actually do change over time in terms of some of these different readings. So these are just some example outputs from our bioacoustic surveys, looking at depth. I believe this bottom one is hardness, and the top is actually the volume. So what percentage of the water column is filled with plants. So we were at 3 sites on each water body, sampling in May and in August, late August and early September, and also found additional sites that we sampled in October. So we're really, this is the off season is really valuable for us for being able to sort of dig deep into this data and connect it to other data that we've collected over the years to sort of learn more about what we're doing and how we can, continue to improve it. This year, we were really excited to be moving into some new ways of finding invasive species, detecting new invasions. A couple examples are meander surveys as well as scuba surveys. We had a number of folks on our team this year that were scuba certified, and they got out on a number of occasions to actually get within, get really up close and personal with these plants and these communities. And it offers a really interesting, and if effective a way of actually looking at the scope and kind of broad and a bigger picture, or maybe a more detailed view at a population or a site that we're concerned about that either has hydrilla, or we think we know where all the hydrilla is, but we don't know the full extent of it. So with that, of course, and so I think this is a little bit back and forth. So some of this drove kind of new findings, but also some of these findings also drove some of the need to actually kind of add to the surveying that we're actually looking at. So this on the left here is existing at the beginning of the year. This is kind of the extent of where we thought hydrilla was. Second map here is essentially the northern end of Aurora here. So this is the Aurora site around here. And then these are actually additional sites. So we're finding that this plant, the infestation at Aurora, is actually creeping further north than we initially thought it had. So obviously this is a problem. This is really making us kind of look at, like I said, changing the way that we're looking for plants, but also kind of looking at what's the best way forward. So we've been continuing to work with other partners on that as well, who are working on that site. So going to the west side of the lake, this is Sheldrake Point. So this is basically right here. Sheldrake Point here, it was another location that was found. It was a third party, essentially, that was doing independent research, scuba diving at this location, and they actually let the DEC and the PRISM know that they had found hydrilla there. So pretty soon after that, our team worked with the New York State DEC folks to sort of get out there and get on the ground and kind of fully look at what plants and the extent of the populations there. So there were a number of locations, different populations found here. These are just a series of them. Some were found by the DEC, some were found by PRISM folks, and these are the areas where we actually were searching. These areas in between were also searched, but they're just different data sets held by the DEC. So like I said, this is really just I see it as an opportunity always to learn more about how this plant spreads and how we can best work with our partners and leverage our partnerships to effectively, attack this invasion, or just, manage it and kind of control it and respond to it in the best way possible. We have a lot of terrestrial stuff going on. We had our terrestrial survey program, our trail survey program this year with 68 people trained, 34 volunteers, recording over 500 observations throughout the region, which is a really great turnout. We're currently ramping up our HWA survey, our Hemlock Woolly Adelgid survey program. This is a list of the different trainings and workshops that we have gearing up for that program this year. Where Matt Gallo is going to be the lead on this project, and reach out to Matt if you're interested in signing up for the program. This is a great way to get out and kind of, double dip, as it were, to sort of, practice conservation and also fill gaps in data and of course, enjoy the outdoors on a trail or otherwise. Get to that second point a little bit later. Spotted lanternfly continues to move through our region this year. Currently, we have confirmed populations in Onondaga, Tompkins, Tioga, and Broome counties. So this, if people have been following this, it continues to spread up through this I-81 corridor, this major travel corridor between eastern Pennsylvania and central New York. So this is something that we are taking a lot of interest in. We are doing a ton of outreach, trying to get as many people aware of this as possible. One thing that I think has been great is we've had a number of different traps distributed, and we actually don't have the numbers here for it, but we've distributed hundreds of maker kits designed for students, K through 12 students, for in their classroom. So these spread, we've distributed all the way between sort of the apple country, between 90 and Lake Ontario, all the way over to inner city Rochester or Syracuse areas where they're seeing populations as well, and down to, of course, Broome County and some of the southern tier counties as well. So we're looking forward to continuing to work with the folks from Ag and Markets on this project as much as is possible. A constant goal for ours is to just provide as much education and outreach as we can. Now that sort of COVID things and public events were a little bit more normalized this year, we were out to get to a ton of in-person events, which is great. We do all kinds of events, from workshops, webinars, tabling, in-person presentations, and so much more. This year we reached over 5,000 people. And these are like really important, direct interactions that we have with people that are at a training, or conversations we're having with people at tabling, where we're kind of getting people involved, recruiting, and ultimately just building our network more and more. So a couple other projects notable to note here. We worked with the New York State DEC to provide 2 technicians to their giant hogweed team that worked throughout our region. All these programs are still sort of being wrapped up. I'm hoping if anybody is on the call that would like to give updates from Broome County or the CWMA project with New York State Parks, we'd love to hear from you at the end. If not, we'll be providing updates kind of to our partners as we sort of close out these projects. So working with Broome County with a intern this summer was really valuable. We had a couple of great terrestrial polls and outreach events, and continuing our work with parks this past summer to map and control invasive species and high priority zones within state parks. Looking ahead, one announcement we have is we've started to re-engage our steering committee. We sent out a note a couple weeks ago, or maybe just a week or 2 ago, kind of gathering information. I have not personally met with our steering committee directly since taking leadership here. So I'm really looking forward to learning from our steering committee and building rapport and learning the best way to really engage each other so that we can really drive our programming and projects forward. Another announcement, we're developing plans for a terrestrial strike team next summer, which will be run by Matt Gallo, our terrestrial invasive species program coordinator. If people have ideas, we're really interested in engaging our partners. This is not something that we have done before, and we're really excited at the opportunity to sort of build our capacity to detect and respond to terrestrial plants as well as we have done with aquatic plants in the past. So if anybody's interested in collaborating or just talking about kind of how we plan to continue with this, we don't have time to go into it here, but we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to Matt Gallo or myself for that. We are in the final stages currently of interviewing for our aquatic invasive species program manager. So that's the position that I held for many years. Here at the PRISM. We're really looking forward to bringing someone on that can run our watercraft steward program and really coordinate all of the other important aquatic programs that we have, and kind of that aquatic network that we have with these different lake associations, soil and water conservation districts, et cetera, and just really kind of build and continue that programming. We're also going to continue, with these new findings of hydrilla, we're going to be continuing to work with the DEC, the local task force down in Ithaca, and hopefully expanding that local task force to include the rest of the lake. And we're also really working towards incorporating a work with our watershed managers for Seneca Lake and Cayuga Lakes. Those are the intermunicipal organization managers for both of those watersheds. They have really good access to, the municipalities, towns, and villages and counties throughout those different watersheds. And we're hoping to, build our engagement through those routes as well. So that's kind of what I've got here. I ran right to the end here. So I'm just going to move on. We can have time for discussion and questions at the end. So I'm just going to continue to stop sharing my screen here, and I am going to allow Kelsey to share the screen. And we will just move right along with it here.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Can you hear me, see me? Everything's good?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, thanks. So I want to thank Sam for inviting me today, and Matt. My name is Kelsey McLaughlin. As he said, I work at the Forest Health Diagnostic Lab. I'm a forest pathologist. And today I'm here to talk about beech leaf disease in New York, and more specifically in the Finger Lakes, and talk about our surveys and some research that we're doing in the area. Hold on. There we go. All right, just a little bit of a lag. So in case you missed it, beech leaf disease is kind of the new happening disease across the state. It's associated with this nematode on the right here. Nematodes are small microscopic roundworms. And the nematode feeding inside the bud of the tree and also inside the leaf kind of causes these galls that you see on the left, those dark stripes right in between the leaf veins. And in really severe cases, it'll be more like this picture on the bottom where you start to get severe shriveling and crinkling. The leaves start to get really leathery, and that's how you know you have a really bad BLD infestation. You can look for this disease year round. So this picture in the upper middle was taken in October, and you can still see those nice dark veins. A lot of smaller beech trees hold their leaves throughout the winter, so you can still kind of look around for this while you're out doing, HWA surveys, for example. It does get a little bit tricky, but it is something to keep an eye out for sure. So that was a little biology recap. Now I want to talk about kind of where it is across the Northeast and also in the state. So this map here is a map of all of our beech leaf disease surveys for 2022, both DEC and the public. And I'm really excited for this map. I think it really highlights the amount of work that we put into looking for this pest, and it really gives like a good distribution of effort. It shows kind of that we've looked all across the state. So it's really exciting, and I'm really glad to see so many people getting interested in this disease. To kind of zoom out a little bit and look at more of a regional scale, this map on the left was put together by partners in July. And it shows kind of the progression of beech leaf disease across the Northeast ever since it was first found. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but this little yellow county right here on Lake Erie in Ohio, that's where the disease was first found in 2012. And ever since, it's kind of just been ramping up across the state. This year, we're looking to add over 50 new counties across the Northeast. We're adding 2 new states, New Hampshire and Michigan. And so we're really just, I don't want to say impressed because that is a positive connotation, but we're really shocked by kind of the exponential spread of this disease over time. And then I do want to highlight the Finger Lakes PRISM specifically. A lot of counties got confirmed just this year. So this is something that might be kind of new to your area. The counties that we don't have confirmations for in the PRISM at this point are Seneca, Ontario, and Broome. I know Madison County isn't colored in on this map, but that was confirmed after this was put together. So those are the areas in the PRISM where we don't currently have it. But any of these counties, we're looking for more information for sure. And I always like to have the survey map on the right kind of up next to the county map. The county map can be scary. It makes it look like the disease is just everywhere. But you can see, particularly in the Finger Lakes PRISM, it's scattered. It's kind of diffuse. You guys are a lot newer to this disease. It hasn't really spread as severely as it has in, say, southeastern New York or western New York. Talking a little bit about IMAP invasives, this is the main kind of tool that we suggest for the public to use for reporting this disease. The beech leaf disease nematode is an option in the form, and you can submit detected or not detected points. We love to get both of them because it really helps us track the spread of this disease kind of across the area. So you can see here in the Lower Hudson PRISM, for example, where it's really bad. There's a lot of detected points, but by using those not detected points, we can almost draw a line and show where the front of this disease really is. So any survey information is good survey information, essentially. We are part of the statewide mapping challenge in July. Beech leaf disease has been part for the last 2 years, I believe. So if you're looking for a particular time to get involved with IMAP, that might be a good option. But we get IMAP reports year round for this disease. DEC is fortunate that we kind of get a whole crew of interns, and we release them throughout the state to look for various pests, not just beech leaf disease, but hemlock woolly adelgid, Asian longhorn beetle, all sorts of different things. And their goal for beech leaf disease was to complete 2 surveys per county. I believe we hit that goal. If not, we got very close to it. Again, very happy with kind of the distribution of this survey data. Really tells us a lot about how this disease has spread. And they surveyed over 35,000 beech trees, which is really impressive. Of those, about 6,800 were symptomatic, and so that's about 19%. So that's a little bit of distribution stuff, where this disease is. Now I'm going to talk about how we're learning about what this disease does. And the main way that we do that is through our monitoring plots. These plots, the first ones were put in 2019, and ever since we've kind of been slowly adding to their numbers. And this is part of a larger project that's overseen by the Forest Service. So this map on the left kind of shows all the plots across the Northeast, all the way down into Ohio, West Virginia, and Maryland. So there's over 150 plots across the Northeast. New York has bumped it up to 20 this year. I believe we put in 4 or 5 new ones this year. So this map on the right is a little more current and kind of just shows the plots that we added in central and northern New York to get a better statewide distribution. In these plots, we're looking at a variety of forest health metrics. And so now that we've had some of these since 2019, or the disease has been in an area for a while, we're starting to be able to tease out some trends and kind of look at preliminary data. So what I have here are a few different metrics that kind of show what this disease does over time. So this graph on the left shows that leaf cover is decreasing. So what this means is the longer the tree is infested with BLD, the fewer leaves it has in its canopy. Those really crinkled, shriveled up leaves, the tree tends to just drop them because they're not really providing a lot of value photosynthetically. And so the tree a lot of times will drop those and you'll see reduced canopy density. The number of unaffected leaves, this bottom graph, also goes down. And that's pretty immediate. From the first year that you detect BLD, you just slowly start seeing more and more of these stripes as you keep looking. And so over time, you get more and more of those symptomatic leaves and fewer normal unaffected leaves. And then the percent dieback increases over time. So that's the amount of dead branches in the tree. And after a couple of years of infestation, we start to see that increase. All of these metrics are kind of characteristic of a disease that kind of causes decline. You get fewer leaves, you get more dieback, you get increasing symptoms over time. So we look to continue these, keep going with this data and kind of see how these trends continue. Some other observations. We did see mortality for the first time this year. This is a double-stemmed beech tree at Caleb Smith State Park down on Long Island. And this was our first official observation of mature tree mortality from beech leaf disease. This tree, it was in pretty rough shape last year. It didn't really have a ton of leaves, but the leaves it did have were affected with BLD. And then this year, obviously, it's dead. I don't think this was just beech leaf disease. This tree also had beech bark disease. There was evidence of root rot in the stand, but I think BLD might have been that last kind of little push out the door and towards mortality for this tree. You can also see in this picture some of that reduced canopy I mentioned. A lot of these trees on Long Island are very severely hit and have very low leaf cover percentages. The other thing that we saw this year, and also last year, but not to the same extent, is this reflush of leaves. So what happened in our really severely affected areas, southeastern New York, Long Island, was the leaves came out in May and they were already severely impacted by the nematode. A lot of them were crinkled and curled up and leathery, and the tree dropped a lot of leaves very early in the season. So that happened in late May. By early to mid-June, we were starting to see reflush where the tree was able to produce a second crop of leaves. And you can see that these leaves actually don't have any stripes because the nematodes haven't had a chance to get into them yet. And we're hopeful that this is kind of going to help the tree continue to photosynthesize. It shows that the tree kind of has vigor and is fighting this. And we're hoping that it'll kind of help these beech to hang on a little longer. Again, if you look in the background of this picture, you guys in the Finger Lakes may not be as familiar with the severe effects, but all this sky you can see is because of beech leaf disease. These were all larger upper canopy beech that were impacted and had that reduced leaf cover. So research updates, I just wanted to share a few research questions that everybody is asking me, and I'm on a national research call, so I can provide the most up-to-date answers. So do we know what causes it? For sure. No, we know it's associated with that nematode that I showed earlier, but they've found that nematode in asymptomatic leaves. And what that means is the researchers are now divided between, well, it must be the nematode and something else that's causing the disease, you know, some fungus or bacteria that's making it suddenly symptomatic, or it could be that the nematode has to reach a certain threshold population in order to cause symptoms. So they're still working on that, but that means that we don't really know what causes it for sure. Do we know how it moves? No. Maybe birds, maybe mites, maybe people. We're not really sure. Personally, from watching this disease for the last few years, kind of seeing where it pops up, seeing the jumps it's able to make, I feel like the bird or mite theory is very plausible just because it pops up in areas you wouldn't really expect people to go. It makes big jumps of like 100 miles a year in between infestations. And so that kind of points towards some flying or quickly jumping vector. We're not ruling out people as a vector for sure. Whenever we go into an infested stand, we bleach our boots just because we don't know how it moves. So we're taking extra precautions at this time. Is there a treatment yet? This is how I always get this question in all caps with 3 question marks. And the answer is there's nothing concrete. It's all really preliminary, and it's mostly been tried on young saplings rather than mature trees. So a lot of good people are working on different chemical treatments, but it's a slow disease to study. It takes a lot of time. And so there's no silver bullet just yet at this time. Outreach, just to let you guys know, there's a lot more information than just what I'm presenting today. This link right here in the blue box, that's our Beech Leaf Disease webpage. That has a lot of good information, everything I talked about today, as well as some lookalikes, some survey tips, things like that if you're just getting started and you haven't really seen this disease before. So that's a really good resource. We also do have flyers like this one on the left. So if you're at an event and you need something to kind of give to people to make them aware of this disease, that's available on our website as well. So how you can help. First and foremost, spread the word. We're just trying to get the word out to as many people as possible about this disease, get it in front of them and get them thinking about it, because this is something that's going to be impacting their forests. Leverage volunteers. In particular, we're looking for survey data using those IMAP invasive tools. And this point is from another presentation, coordinating surveys in uninfested areas. Because this disease moves so fast, we're always trying to look kind of one step ahead. So I would say, you know, I'd love to see surveys in those uninfested counties, Onondaga, Seneca, Broome. But given that it's so diffuse right now in the Finger Lakes and it's so new in the area, I would say any survey data is good survey data. And then also train surveyors on good reporting techniques. I looked at a lot of beech leaf disease IMAP reports this year, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to confirm a lot of them due to poor photo quality. So this picture on the right is kind of the ideal beech leaf disease photo. You see the underside of the leaf, it's backlit, so you can nicely see those stripes. It's not blurry, it's well focused, it's well lit. And that's kind of what's needed to really get a confirmation on this disease. And then just keep us in the loop. If your group is getting the same question from the public about beech leaf disease and you don't know how to answer it. If you're seeing beech leaf disease do something weird or kill trees or seem really advanced, if you're having an event about the disease, just keep us in the loop. Let us know what's happening and how we can help, because we're always happy to talk to people about this disease. And that is all I have. So if I have time, I'd be happy to take some questions.
Great. We do have a couple minutes for questions if we can open it up to the group.
I do see there's some in the chat.
Okay, yes, let's see. Okay, so I can thank you for putting that out. From Steve Young, do you expect BLD to eventually eliminate beech in New York if no control?
So that's a tricky question. And we're kind of divided on it, even just in my office. I've seen what looks promising in terms of, in mature trees, the upper half will be free of the disease and the lower half will be more severely affected. So it seems like there's some kind of climatic variable that might give trees a little bit of resistance, whether that's airflow or light or something. So I'm hopeful that that would maybe help them to continue to persist. At this time, we can't say for sure. We don't really know.
Yeah, it's still so early, especially in our area. Michelle Henry from Ithaca asking, the new awareness in Finger Lakes area, have we just started looking and thus have started to find pockets, thus high population omission, or is this what is truly the local story of current infestation?
So I think this question boils down to, is it just here because we just started looking? Yeah. And I don't think so, because the intern survey that I mentioned has been happening for a few years now. We've been working with state parks to survey their areas. And so we've been surveying these areas for a long time. Well, a relatively long time, since at least 2020, looking for this disease. And so I think that it truly is kind of spreading across the state.
I think, and just on one hand, are a couple of counties, though, however, it seemed like they don't have any surveys yet. So I think that's a great opportunity for us to sort of try to get on the ground and help, fill some gaps, but also just for anybody that's going to be working with us through, the trail survey program next year that we'll be running, or really just walking around. This might be a really good opportunity for us to sort of build our programming about this pest and, inform people in areas that it's just not widely known.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll say too, it's easy to recognize, easy to survey for. So it's definitely something. I look at beech leaves all the time now as I walk through the woods. So it's definitely something that's quick and easy to look for.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kelsey. If anybody has any additional questions for Kelsey, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we can perhaps get to them a little bit later. So thanks again, Kelsey. And we're going to just move right along here to our next speaker. As I mentioned, we have our own Sydney VanWinkle from the Finger Lakes PRISM at the Finger Lakes Institute presenting today about the Macrophyte survey program and working on evaluation of this community science program with RIT students. Yes, look forward to hearing this, and thank you, Sydney.
Yeah, thanks, Sam, for that introduction. So like Sam said, Sydney VanWinkle here. I'm really excited to be talking about our long-term partnership with RIT and in evaluating our Finger Lakes Macrophyte survey program. So I'm just going to start out with a little bit of background about the Macrophyte survey program. If you're not familiar, hopefully this is helpful. The real goal of this program is to engage local communities in early detection of aquatic invasive species such as hydrilla, starry stonewort, and water chestnut. We hope that the program increases public awareness of these aquatic invasive species and engages the public in monitoring. And then ultimately that this would increase our capacity for early detection and rapid response to these new infestations. So a quick overview, kind of how the program works. So volunteers are usually recruited in the spring, and then we train them to conduct rake toss surveys, to identify aquatic invasive species that they find during these rake tosses, and then to submit their findings using a reporting app. We provide MSP kits, which usually have a rake, different field guides in them to each participant when they sign up. And then we ask that volunteers sample at a water body of their choosing from June to October, and that they sample and then submit their findings once every 2 weeks throughout those months. So just looking back at the 2022 sampling season, we had 46 total volunteers across 23 water bodies and over 300 rake tosses submitted. Really great year for the program. We had the most coverage on Canandaigua, Seneca, Cayuga, Canisius, and Keuka. All of those lakes had roughly 4 to 6 volunteers. We didn't have any coverage on Canadice or Hemlock lakes. And I do want to mention that over time, each year, this program experiences quite a bit of change. This is sometimes improvements that we implement based on the evaluation that I'm going to speak about, but it's also, changes from different management turnover year after year. But from 2017 to now, overall, we have seen the program trend toward growth, which is really great. So this is just a map of the rake tosses from this past field season. So as you can see, we had really good coverage. Something I talk about with the volunteers this past field season is this area where the Erie Canal is. And we have had some volunteers who might be interested in going to that area next season to kind of do some rake tosses and see what we find in that gap. So just quick high-level results for this past field season. We had 14 unique and native species reported, which is great. We really like seeing these native species. The top 3 for this was native pondweeds, eelgrass, and then coontail. We had 7 unique invasive species that were reported, and the top 3 for that category are Eurasian water milfoil, curly pondweed, and starry stonewort. We had 26 reports of algae across all the water bodies. And then really important for this program is that 85% of all of the data was confirmed through photos. So that meant we were getting really good photos from volunteers, which we really appreciate, and it really helps our early detection and rapid response capacity. So a few early detections from this past field season. So we actually reconfirmed the starry stonewort early detection that we found in 2021 further south on Seneca Lake than we previously knew about. So in 2021, we confirmed this report, and in 2022, we were actually able to deploy our EDRR field crew to conduct a point intercept survey at this location where the volunteer was sampling. And the crew looked across the 100-meter grid around the location to try to understand the extent of this population a little bit better. We also had a suspected case of starry stonewort on Honeoye Lake this season. It was reported really early before the MSP had even officially started. It was kind of a practice rake toss. And through, collecting the sample and collaborating with our partners at FLCC, we actually were able to confirm that it wasn't starry stonewort and it was a native Nitella species. So I just really want to, again, talk about how these early detections are possible due to these partnerships and collaboration and the public's awareness of aquatic invasive species in our region. So now getting into this partnership with Rochester Institute of Technology's Environmental Science Capstone course. So the Capstone course runs every year with a new group of students. There are many projects that the student groups work on. And I'm just going to talk about the one that we're involved in. So from 2014 to 2018, RIT Capstone students worked with IMAP Invasives to create invasive species maps and help build website features. On the right of the screen here is an example layout for a portion of that project that they would have created. In 2017 to 2018, the group actually surveyed a local lake association and identified a gap in knowledge and invasive species action. So they were finding that the public knew about aquatic invasive species, but they weren't taking action to necessarily report them. And this is where in 2018 to 2019, the Finger Lakes PRISM was added as a partner. So the group kind of shifted focus from 2018 on to investigate how to successfully engage local communities in invasive species programs and in reporting. So this group 2018 to 2019 started collecting qualitative data through surveys and quantitative data to get at this, this new focus. So the overall goal since 2018 onward has been to foster community engagement in invasive species detection and management efforts to reduce the impact of invasive species in our region. So these groups have really used a data-driven approach to investigate recruitment, retention, and engagement in community science by looking at things like participant characteristics in the MSP, different training preferences, if and how the type of training volunteers receive influences future reporting, program engagement and participation, different equipment preferences, and then overall just best management for these programs long term. So kind of getting into the crux of the capstone project design. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, RIT students build on work that's completed in the previous years. So each year it's a new group of students, they kind of take on this project and then move it forward. So every year since 2018, students have participated in mock sampling, conducting these rake tosses, just like the volunteers do in the program. They get to present their work at the MSP meetings. They interact with these volunteers. They also present at various public forums across our region. Since 2018, the students have conducted a postseason survey to analyze factors that impact the volunteers' retention in the MSP. And then in 2021, they launched a new preseason survey to start to analyze and look at volunteer recruitment. So a few of the ongoing outputs, many of these are kind of like living documents that are updated year after year based on data that is collected. So we actually implement a lot of these changes and we improve the program based on these assessments that the RIT students conduct. So for a few examples, our rake design has changed over the years. There was a rake design previous to the two that are shown on the screen here, but this is based on feedback from the volunteers. We've also changed our reporting method over time, starting with paper data sheets, moving to IMAP and Survey 123, again, based on volunteer feedback, based on the literature and things that the students are researching. There is a living document that is a community science engagement plan that the students have been working on since 2018. To the right of the screen is kind of a snapshot of that plan, but it's a really long document that's super valuable to us managers of these programs. They also become IMAP Invasive certified trainers each year, which is really great. They're also working on an MSP story map. So this has filtered IMAP invasives data. It goes through and talks about the high priority invasive species in our region. It also filters by the Macrophyte survey program. So eventually this tool will be public and it can be something that volunteers can look at and kind of understand the MSP scope a little better. And then lastly, they've been working on a scientific paper for many years, and hopefully all their findings about community science and engagement will be published soon in that. So in conclusion, I just want to reiterate that successful community science programs are really valuable. They increase the sharing of invasive species knowledge in our region and outside of our region. They increase our regional EDRR capacity, which is super valuable to us. We have a really big region, as all of you know, and so this is super helpful for us. And then these partnerships in these programs, another just invaluable resource. I'd like to also say that evaluation is vital. We've seen that for this program for long-term success. And then partnerships are needed for every aspect of our work, as you all know. We're really lucky to be able to implement data-driven improvements to the MSP thanks to this research that is being conducted by the RIT students. So I think I probably flew through that. If we have some time for questions, I'm happy to take any.
Yes, thank you, Sydney. That was great. It's great to hear about all the important work that goes into this and kind of the details of kind of building these programs. We did have a question from Steve Young. Are you looking for any state rare aquatics like Nias marina or Nias olivacea?
So we're not like specifically targeting those species, but we do try to identify everything that is pulled up on a rake toss. So we ask for pictures of every single species on the rake. So if volunteers happened upon those, I think we would know about that, and we would definitely work toward that identification.
Great. I think that's also a really interesting point. I wonder if that could be, built into enriching the program and, not just looking for invasives, but also looking for, hunting for rare and endangered species. Maybe that could be sort of an interesting take on this for any of our, community monitoring programs. I'm sure there could be an interesting study into the usership there, which would be really interesting. Heritage would love that. Yes, awesome. Thank you, Steve. Any other questions for Sydney? I have a question. What your thoughts on are, Sydney? I think what would you say are kind of the biggest barriers to getting volunteers to interact with programs like this?
I think the biggest barrier that I think about is the time commitment for community science programs, taking time to conduct a rake toss and then identify everything, taking time to learn the identification. That's often what I hear as a barrier, and I know from our data too. But I think a lot of volunteers are very committed to this program. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay, great. We are a little bit ahead of schedule, but again, please feel free to ask questions to, I think Kelsey is still on the call, but definitely Sydney or myself about some of the stuff that we talked about earlier. We are going to just move right ahead into our partner roundtable discussion and updates. I have a pretty short list. I have 2 people that would like to give updates that I don't have slides for, and then I actually have a couple of slides for 2 groups that would like to give that provided those. So I'm just going to start with some of the folks that did not have slides. Please feel free to just rattle off any updates that you would like to share for the group. First off, we have Katie Amatangelo from SUNY Brockport. Katie, would you like to share?
Sure. Hey, guys. So we continued this past summer on 3 different projects that I just wanted to update on. So we're continuing to work on controlling the mile-a-minute infestations in Geneseo and at Oak Orchard, which is outside of Finger Lakes PRISM. This year was the first year that we actually had few enough to pull that we were able to count them all. So we counted 420 mile-a-minutes that we pulled. So that was exciting, rather than just taking handfuls and shoving them in bags. So we envision that's still going to be a long-term project, as the seed bank lasts up to 7 years. And during COVID, we weren't able to get out there as often as we would have liked. So we're going to continue on with that. And then we also had, I think, 25 or 30 spotted lanternfly traps around Monroe County with the assistance of Soil and Water Conservation District from Monroe. And we did not find any spotted lanternfly, as you mentioned earlier. None of those traps have found any yet, which is great. And then lastly, we started a project where we actually released psyllid to try to control Japanese knotweed at a couple sites with the assistance of USDA permit from them. But we released them and they immediately all disappeared. So we're not feeling too optimistic about those. So we're going to try again next year.
Fair enough. Look forward to hearing about it. Thank you, Katie. Next up, we have Michelle Henry from the City of Ithaca Water Chestnut contractor for the Ithaca Reservoir. Michelle, would you like to share, please?
Absolutely. So this year is we started in 2018. So we're going on 4 years, 5 years or so of pulling chestnut out of the reservoir. Unfortunately, we thought we had things tailing off so that the populations would be massively decreasing. This year we found a deep water spot mat that was rather large enough to fill like took us about 3 or 4 trips with kayaks to go out and collect everything off for this one mat. But the rest of the sites were like the entire east side of the reservoir had no populations, and then just the closer to the dam and along the shallows of the western side had populations, but there was one deep water mat that we hadn't gone out to see because we were just looking in the shallows before.
Great. Thank you, Michelle, for sharing. Much appreciated. Always good to hear from you. Next, we have Michelle Wunderlich from the Cayuga County Water Quality Management Agency Invasive Species Working Group. Michelle, did you want me to share your slide here, or do you have?
Sure, it's not very exciting, but it has a picture on it. So
sure, yeah, absolutely. Let me just plug this in here. All right, yeah, whenever you are ready. Can you see this?
there we go. Yeah, I can see it. So our Cayuga County Water Quality Management Agency has an invasive species working group. They come up with a plan every year of what they want to work on. These are the 3 categories we had this year. Survey invasive species in Cayuga County. The main project for that is the Asian clam survey of the Emerson Park Beach area. We also do education training and public participation. I did a invasive species identification training for Invasive Species Awareness Week. And we also do invasive species prevention, control, and management. This is a picture of a sign that we put up on the boat launches in Fairhaven, and Sterling Nature Center. So it's for Lake Ontario. And I also work with the health department to put up the drinking water results from the hydrilla treatment. So that's quickly what we do.
All right, well, thank you, Michelle, for sharing.
You're welcome.
Next, we have Carrie Marchner from the New York State Hemlock Initiative. Carrie, would you like to share? I think, can you see my slides, your slides up here?
I can see your slides. If you just click to the next one, you can just use yours. So the Hemlock Initiative has continued with its work on biocontrols across the state and in the Finger Lakes. This is a map of all of our biocontrol releases to date in the Finger Lakes, except I'm missing one right here that we did last year at a location right on this inlet. So this spring we released are Leucotoraxis. That would be the silver flies that feed on the spring generation of HWA. And then in the fall, we did a bunch of Laricobius beetle releases. That's the biocontrol that feeds on the winter generation of HWA. In 2022, we confirmed an established Laricobius population at High Tor in the Finger Lakes, and that brings us up to a total of 9 established Laricobius sites in the Finger Lakes region. I'd like to talk about some of the success that a few groups in the Finger Lakes have had with pulling together either lake association, watershed association, or county level groups to address hemlock woolly adelgid in their area of interest, be it a watershed or a county. The Skinny Atlas Lake Association, thank you, is working on year 2 or year 3 of a $50,000 grant they put together to do HWA treatments in their watershed. The Owasco Lake Association has like a $150,000 grant that they're in year 2 of to treat. That one's a mixture of private and public properties in their watershed for hemlock woolly adelgid. And the Honeoye and Canandaigua area, the county there has another grant that from the same source that they're using to address HWA in that area. So that's turned out to be a really successful approach for hemlock woolly adelgid. And if you want to talk about how that's been done, I'd be happy to meet with your organization and chat with you about how that's worked and what the funding mechanisms are and how we can support you if you want to do that in your area. We also, the Hemlock Initiative does a bunch of different talks. We do basic HWA ID and survey, but so does the PRISM, and they've got a great program going on, so you can reach out to either one of us for that. We can also help you put together an HWA survey team for your area if you want to do more group surveys instead of just going out solo. And if you want to do HWA surveys and you're not sure where to focus, we can help target you to places where we don't have good HWA information on public lands. And finally, we have resources to help people think through HWA management. So if you're interested in any of those topics and you want us to come chat with your group, email me, Carolyn Marshner at the Hemlock Initiative. Thanks.
Thanks, Gary. Let me see. All right, and those are, that is essentially the list of folks that have mentioned that they would like to give updates, so we can just sort of open it up here to general discussion or additional updates from folks. Feel free to put anything in the chat or raise your hand or just unmute yourself and speak up, and love to hear from you. And of course, if not, we can wrap up early and everybody can move on. We do have one update from Jacob Kearney. Monroe County Soil and Water distributed 14 aquatic invasive signs to 6 municipality boat launches for boat checking. That is wonderful. I'd like to get an idea of kind of where you ended up putting those. Jacob, maybe we can either put it in the chat here or we can chat offline.
Hey, Sam.
Hey.
So we gave signs to the towns of Greece, Penfield, Irondequoit, Rockport, Clarkson, and Parrington. At various launches. Not all of them are up yet. We're trying to get an update still from all of them. But at least 3 of those have gone up. and the rest, like I said, we're still waiting on an update on. But we targeted all municipality-owned launches in the county for this summer.
Great. So are those, a lot of those on the canal or tribs
Most
or?
of them, yeah, most of them are canal launches. A few, like one in Arundicoy is the state park there for the bay. And then other ones were along the larger creeks like Black Creek or the Genesee River.
It's great to hear. Thank you for sharing, Jacob.
Sam, this is Kelly. Would you like a list when they're all implemented? I mean, would that be helpful to you?
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I think it's something we have kind of our own internal semi-public database of launches and access sites, and we like to keep a general idea of kind of existing signage and sort of invasive species infrastructure, as it were, between signage and with ramp facilities and things like that. So yeah, we'd love to hear kind of more about where those ended up. That'd be great.
Okay, yeah,
Thank you.
great. We can provide, we've been tracking it. So I know, like Jake said, he's done some recon for how many have been put in. We're trying to make sure that they get in before next season. So we'll definitely get you that information when we
Awesome.
have it
Yeah,
all
thank you so much.
compiled.
Awesome. Michelle Henry's asking, are there invasion expansions or new infestations that haven't already been mentioned throughout the region? I think the main ones from what we know have been mentioned here between the spotted lanternfly and hydrilla within Cayuga Lake. Jacob also mentioned we also continued to monitor Japanese Angelica tree in the county, and the two populations have significantly decreased in the new growth found this summer. No chemical control is needed. That's great to hear. All right, last call for updates here. All right, we will wrap up early and get everybody on their way so they can drive home safe through the weather today. Just wanted to say thanks to all of our partners. So much of what we are able to achieve, relies on these relationships that we've built over the years. Thank you to our volunteers, of course. It goes, just the same for those folks between our water chestnut pulls and volunteer events to our community science projects. I couldn't do it without you. And then finally, our staff, both seasonal and permanent staff. We're all very lucky to be working with such smart people and driven, passionate folks. And we're just happy to be here for another year and looking forward to continuing the work that we do next year, always growing, expanding our networks and partnerships, and kind of just generally moving the ball forward in terms of invasive species management. So thanks again, everybody, for coming. We will have this posted at some point. If you have questions about this presentation or anything else, please feel free to reach out to me directly or any of our other staff. Thanks again, and happy holidays, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Sam. Merry Christmas.